Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for today, the 29th. My watch is broken. The 29th of June, 2022. It's an early one. I'm on the road working today, so got to get an early one in. It'll be a quick one. Just taste a little bite of stuff and things that are happening in the world today. Thank you very much for everyone who's been dropping comments and stuff like that, especially on the YouTube channel. I just got back around to looking at those. The format that I use for YouTube, I don't generally look at the comments and things like that, so I just do it every now and then try and catch up. So if I missed replying to some comments, I apologize, but thank you for everyone who's putting in comments. A lot of US people who have been putting in information and stuff like that, because I usually talk about some US based stuff and then go, what's going on there? I don't really know the situation on the ground, so I appreciate people filling me in on stuff like that. Kieran, yo, how you going? All right, let's jump into it. So where are we going to start today? Sri Lanka fuel crisis. Schools shut, public sector told to work from home. So Sri Lankan military forced to hand out tokens to people queuing for what little fuel is left on Monday. So if you haven't heard me talk about Sri Lanka, or you've had your head in a hole for a little while, funky looking light there on YouTube, sorry. Can't do that. Down lights. Sri Lanka. It's gone into complete collapse. It's in economic collapse at the moment. They're going to be they are struggling, and they're about to be struggling a lot more. They are, by all looks of it, they're almost out of fuel. Totally, the entire country is almost out of fuel. Food, they're very short on. Medical supplies, they're also pretty short on, by the looks of it. Schools in the capital, Colombo, shut, and public sector workers asked to work from home to ease consumption. So yeah, they're in a bit of a state of collapse at the moment. IMF, I think, is scrambling. The International Money Fund is scrambling to get them some money to try and bail them out. But the way it looks at the moment, this is just kind of throwing good money after bad. No, I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. People need help here in Sri Lanka, but it's not going to fix the problem. That's the short answer of it. That is not going to fix the problem. Their problem is deep, it's systemic, and it's interlinked with what's happening in the world at the moment. And they're just they were the most fragile state, or one of the more fragile states, at the point where everything started to go wrong. And so then it just imploded. And now this is what's happening to them. But as I always say, Sri Lanka is very fascinating to me, because I feel like Sri Lanka is the canary in the coal mine. We should be looking at this. We should be seeing what's happening in Sri Lanka, how the government handled things, what the people's reaction then was. And we should be thinking about when this is going to happen in our countries, and what we should do as individuals to best prepare ourselves for that eventuality. What happens when Australia goes on fuel rationing? It's it's not beyond the realm of possibility. I can guarantee it. Just looking at how we have created our fuel system, our fuel security, or a better way to put it would be fuel insecurity. We are not immune to these sorts of things. No fuel, we can grow all the food we want, but if there's no fuel, we can't move it around our own country. We have a huge country. Our country is massive. And unless you're living in and around places that grow a lot of different, a very diverse growing area, which there are actually not that many in Australia. Australia is very much monoculture in the way it grows things. So yeah, you might be in a wheat area, you might be in a cattle area. Don't expect to get your avocados though. Don't expect to get your nuts, your seeds, your veggies, your leafy green veggies, and things like that. They're all grown in different areas of Australia. There are some areas that do better at this, that are actually situated a little bit better, and climates that are a little bit better for that. But yeah, anyway, the short point is fuel runs out in Australia, food runs out, everything runs out. It's done. And this is what Sri Lanka is going through at the moment. So it's worthwhile having a look at what's happening there and trying to wrap your head around that. All right. Let's jump over in Australia now with our food. Beehives have been locked down in Southeast Australia in a race to stop a spread of a lethal parasite. So there's, I didn't actually write it down here what the parasite is called. I was reading this story. There's a parasite that gets into bees and causes like a colony collapse and basically kills off the bees. This is a pretty big deal. The Australian honey industry is quite large. In fact, one of the there are some people who actually think that Australia and our beekeeping ability was one of the things that has kept the beekeeping ability in the world buoyed up. So US a few years ago was in almost a state of collapse with their honey industry. And interestingly, this is how I found out about this. I actually owned a protein bar, a natural protein bar company for a little while, and we used to get raw organic honey. And all of a sudden, we couldn't find any raw organic honey in Australia. And so we started asking, and like we were trying to go direct to farmers as much as possible. So I started asking farmers, I started asking people, and they basically said, look, we are not producing that amount of honey right now because we're sending a lot of our queens and some of our colonies even overseas. And I was like, what? We're doing what? And they're like, yeah, we're sending them over to the US. I'm like, why would you do that? And I go, well, I can sell the honey at like, $5 a pot or a liter or whatever, or I can take $1,500 and send the queen overseas. So I'm just going to do that en masse. Luckily, that didn't continue on for too long because that probably would have devastated the Australian beekeeping market. But now, we're seeing things like this. On top of, like, the reason this popped out so much for me was like, oh, bird flu over in the US and the UK and, cattle dying off and this and that happening within food industries. Now, bang, Australian bees are getting hit. It's a pretty big deal. Something that I'm concerned about. I know I've got several friends who keep bees. I'm gearing up to be a beekeeper myself. I'm about to get the equipment and things like that for it myself and jump into it. So this sort of stuff is pretty devastating because bees don't just create honey, in case you didn't know. Bees are also the main form of pollination, of cross-pollination for all our food industry. So what they actually do, interestingly enough, there are beekeepers who all they do pretty much is load their hives onto a truck, and then they get hired. They actually get paid by farmers to drive around, put their bees there. So the bees fly around and they pollinate the farm, and then they collect the bees back, like they collect the hives back up, put them on the truck, drive them to the next farm. And so this is happening all over Australia, all over the world really, but it happens all over Australia. So bees die off, that pollination doesn't work. Then you have to have people out there with little sticks, little earbuds going, get the pollen from that and put it on that, and get the pollen from that and put it on that, and it's that's actually something that they do in India and allegedly China, but I haven't seen it in China. But they're definitely doing it in India because they have had such a bee collapse in that country, and they know that you cannot grow food without bees. Without bees, all food dies or does not pollinate to fruit. No fruiting food, no food for us. We don't eat. And then we're into eating bugs. Kieran says, our bees have had a lot of trouble over the last few years. Yep. Mimi and Pop's Homestead said, we're new keepers in the US. Good. Awesome. Excellent. More people, I reckon, just more people keeping bees. I don't think people really understand how important bees are to the human race. Like it's a kind of existential threat. If bees die, we die. Or we have to start doing it by hand, all of it. But eventually, like, something will go wrong with that. We have to keep bees. So if you have the ability, I highly recommend that you get a hive. Even if you don't harvest it or anything, if you can just stick a hive somewhere or create a space for bees to actually do their thing. So there's just down here, actually, I'm in Canberra, in the capital city, and there's a place where I go to grab my coffee in the morning when I'm here. There's a little plot, a little garden there, and the entire purpose of that garden is just a bee garden, like natural Australian bees. So natural Australian bees don't produce honey like to the amount that European ones do. So that's why we've got European bees here. But they still do a little bit, or some species do a little bit. But yeah, we can set them up. They still do the pollinating thing. They still fly around doing that. So there's that garden down there, and it's just filled with bee-friendly plants, and it's got all these like sticks and little hidey holes and things like that, like a little cabin thing in there, so bees can like nest in there and do their thing, which is awesome. All right, so bees, think about that, and every time you see a story about bees dying off or anything like that, like you should be legitimately concerned about that. That is a worry. So yeah, just be thinking about that. Let me just move some stuff around here. Can't actually see. There we go. All right, what else we got here? I'm going to skip on. I'll come back to this civil war brewing in the US. I want to talk about first, though, world food sort of stuff again, mainly centering around Russia, Ukraine, Africa type things. So a little report's coming out, and this is from a speech I think that was given at the G7 recent, like that's going on now. Russia engaged in geopolitically motivated attack on global food security. So what G7 is coming out and said, they're going, hey, all this food shortage, it's all Russia. They've been gearing towards this for a while with this rhetoric, like Russia, Russia, Russia. It's all Russia. It's all Putin. There's shortages, blah, blah, blah. What they're saying now, how they're actually gearing this up, is they're saying Russia is actually utilizing this shortage, so that they're creating this shortage in order to cause pain in the world so that we have to capitulate. Maybe they are. Maybe, like, if they are, then that's Putin's playing 3D chess. Like, he's a step ahead of the game here. If G7's only just catching up with it now, I don't think they are. I think that's just a unintended side effect of the war in Ukraine. But it is still what's happening. So what we're looking at here is here's a report that says up to 44 million people are facing starvation, and global leaders pressure the West for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. So what's happened in the last 24 hours is a lot of world leaders have come out and said, hey, like, especially places like Africa, but other places as well, but Africa in particular, people are going to starve to death because grain can't get out of this area. So we really need peace in this area now. And now there's a lot of pressure. There's stories starting coming out of certain world leaders saying, hey, Zelensky, you need to redefine what victory is here. You're not going to get Ukraine back. Okay, Donbass, I think you got to write it off. Crimea, definitely write it off. Just sue for peace, and let's get this grain back out there. So now, where the entire world has been very anti-Russia, now they're starting to go, ooh, look, we're going to need that grain. So Zelensky, we're with you. We're 100% with you. Let's just take a step back on this one. I personally don't think that's going to happen. I can't see Zelensky going like, yeah, all right, yeah, no, we'll do that. Not just judging by what has happened thus far. Okay, it's just not. It would be a 180 turn for Zelensky to do that. White House officials doubt Ukraine can reclaim all territory. So again, from the US, this is coming out, which is a big thing because US has been the big driver. Like, no, Ukraine, you're going to do this. Their like hand is in the back of Ukraine, pushing into the meat grinder that is Russia. Going, you can do it. Come on, get up there. Here's another gun. Here's another gun. Keep going. Here's some more money. And now they're saying, look, you're going to have to redefine what would constitute a Ukrainian victory, in their words. Zelensky's told G7 leaders gathered for the summit that he is set on winning the conflict by regaining ground held on February 24 by the end of 2022. So that's where the state of play of that whole thing is now. What it's starting to become about is food, is people starving to death. And so the pressure now is going to start switching from all this pressure on Putin, where I think the West is finally maybe starting to realize that all these sanctions that they're doing are not working and probably will never work. So now they're just going to go, well, what can we get out of this? Where can we draw the line here? I think the pressure will start to be increased on Zelensky and Ukraine to just cut their losses now. And that's that. Who knows, though? Who knows? Also in this area, Turkey agrees to let Finland and Sweden into NATO. That was a bit of a surprise. I read an article when I first got up this morning, which was 2 hours ago, 4:30, and it was all about like, yep, Turkey's really like not there yet. They're still saying not like Sweden, Finland. You're saying things. We want to see you do stuff. We're not going to let you in NATO. And then all of a sudden, just not that long ago, actually, this was under an hour ago, stories come out that apparently Turkey agrees to support Finland and Sweden's NATO membership bids. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg added that alliance leaders will invite Sweden and Finland to become members officially on Wednesday. So that is tomorrow Australian time, Thursday Australian time, because we live in the future, and we're ahead of everyone else. Also, we don't exist if you ask a flat earther. But yeah, that was a bit of a surprise to me this morning. So how is that going to shake up things in that area? Who knows? This could change things. Also, I think it's interesting that this also happened. That this deal was brokered in light of what I was just saying. That all this pressure, like they're going, oh God, I don't think we can win this war, Ukraine. Like you need to do something here. And then like, wow, we've got Sweden and Finland in now. So it's this whole thing is in flux, and it's where it's going to fall out, where the die are going to land. Who knows? Kieran says, hey, Steve. How you going, bro? Kieran says, it's hilarious how this war is panning out. All this kerfuffle to not know it's all about taking out the Khazarian mafia. Well, I don't know about that. If you know more information about that, please let me know. But that's the first I've heard that term, Khazarian mafia. So I don't know. All right. Just quickly, while I'm sort of talking about US politicking and war standing, Pentagon moves to wrest rare earths control from China. So just quick snapshot on this, because it's something I haven't really talked about before, but China controls a lot of mining industry. One of the big things that they control is rare earth. So pulling rare earth minerals out of the ground. They have a lot within the country. They also control a lot of other mines in other countries. Who cares? What does that mean? Rare earths are like, I can't tell you how essential rare earth elements are to our modern era. To everything that you're using right now, that you're listening to me on right now, all of it, rare earths, and just so many other things. And if we're looking at going into a green future, then these things are going to make a huge impact. So US is actually, like, surprisingly, the Pentagon is starting to look forward a little bit and plan forward a little bit. Because they're looking at the situation, they're going, hey, if we go into conflict with China, they could shut the valve on rare earths, and that's really going to screw us. It's going to screw everyone. It's one of those bargaining chips, one of those trump cards that the Chinese have, that the Pentagon has clued onto and gone like, that's one of those things that they could just go like, nope, that's ours now. You can't have it. So they're putting something in place. They haven't exactly said what, but they're putting something in place to try and get control of at least some of these rare earth elements, because they're rightly saying that China will use it as a weapon. I mean, I say they're rightly saying it, as in, if China were to watch what US has done now for decades in many, many different formats, where they utilize, especially the US dollar, as a weapon, which and the latest one of this was the sanctions that have utilized the US dollar and the petrodollar as a weapon against Russia, which obviously didn't work very well, or hasn't worked thus far very well. But the US, we always see things from our perspective, right? So the US is looking at China and go, if I was China, this is what I would do. And I don't think they're too far off the mark here. But this is something interesting. Rare earths is another thing that maybe you haven't heard of so much, or is not in the general psyche of our society, but it should be, because they are super important. And as we continue on going through technological advancement, as we are, and becoming more and more and more heavily reliant on the technologies that we utilize today to just even live, then things like this are going to start to become a really, really big deal to us. Keep your eye on that space anyway. Holland closes dozens of farms and cattle ranches to reduce nitrogen by 30%. If you've ever heard me talk about this sort of stuff before, you know how frustrating I find this, that at the point where we're sitting on a world food crisis right now. In fact, we have people who are starving right now. And like I just said, we're about to have up to, I'm talking about months time, not years, but within months, 44 million people dying of starvation. And we've got countries saying, let's close 1/3 of our farms because we're worried about nitrogen output. Like, now's not the time to be worrying about nitrogen output, even if that was true. And I don't believe it's true, that this would have any sort of impact on the greater environment. When we're talking about a worldwide environment, it wouldn't have any significant impact closing down 30% of your farms. Well, angry farmers have taken to the streets. They're driving their tractors. They're blocking roads in Holland. So, this the wrap up of this story. So this one was from Ice Age Farmer, who's someone I recommend you probably have a look into. Does some really, really good in-depth analysis of things that are attacking our food supply right now. Ice Age Farmer. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got a Telegram account. Also has an Instagram account, I think. He says at the bottom of this, not just farmers should be out there, everyone who eats. Absolutely right. Like, this it's beyond, far, far beyond a joke now. This is a systemic attack on our food supply, and we need to be very, very rightly concerned about this. Okay, this is a problem. This, again, I keep saying this, but the steps we take is you and I as individuals need to start growing our own food. We need to take control of our own food system as individuals and grow as much as we can personally. That's not going to help the masses, though. And when the masses run out of food, it's not going to be a good time. People who are starting to starve to death, when they're at that point of starving, we see this sort of stuff on TV all the time, or I used to, at least in the 80s, when kids in Ethiopia were starving to death and we had to send money to them all the time. You see it on the TV and everyone's got lethargy and they're all just sitting there like, I can't do that. It's not going to be like that, right? It's not going to be like that in our societies. We are rich, spoilt little children in our societies, and it's not starvation that we have to worry about. It's less. It's change, and it's less that we have to worry about, because when we start to go down from 15 different cereals to choose from to 2, and you're not going to get it every week, even though we still got food, even though we can still eat something, people will start getting utterly angry and start doing stuff about it. And when the hordes start moving out, when people start to realize that we are on the cusp of food shortages, then we're going to have anarchy, absolute anarchy. I can guarantee it. People will start freaking out because I can tell you, if I couldn't feed my kids, I would be doing anything I could. Desperate people are dangerous people, and I don't want you to be desperate, and I don't want me to be desperate, because that is going to lead to a very, very dark future, a very bad place for a lot of people. So we need to do what we can to support ourselves, and then go beyond that. Once we've sorted that out, once we've got that hard footing there, then expand and see if we can grow a bit more for more people, and a bit more for more people, and encourage other people to do more about this. Kieran, the best advice you can get, learn how to grow food now. Absolutely. Barefoot She Bushman. Hey, how you going, by the way? But why are those in charge in a position to believe that a 30% reduction in their meat supply isn't only to strain their food industry? These are the questions people should be asking, right? Awake Aussie Prepper. My friend used to say society is only 3 missed meals away from rioting. Yep. Or I say, I used to say society is only 9 meals away from anarchy. And I've stopped saying that now, because I realized that's 3 days without eating. And because I've done that many times in the past. In fact, I just did it the other day when I got horribly sick and I just couldn't eat for two and a bit days. But I've done it regularly in my life, where I haven't eaten for an extended period of time for different reasons. And I'm like, oh, I know I can do that. But on that 4th day, some stuff happens, right? It's like you go do a vision quest, right? You don't eat for 4 days, and for 3 days you're like, oh, you're going through stuff, and then on that 4th day you're like, oh, I can see God. But that's what's actually going on there. What I've realized, though, that I'm probably not normal. Okay, I know I'm not normal. I get it. Okay, 3 meals is the correct term. 24 hours. We're 24 hours away from anarchy. At any point, society is 24 hours, 3 missed meals away from anarchy. You don't feed people for 1 day, bad stuff happens. So, yep, that's what we're looking at potentially. And I want to touch on this point too, that in Australia, in the US, in Europe and things like that, it's not even the starvation point that we're worrying about. Like I said, people can survive 4 days without eating. People can survive for weeks without eating. We can. Our bodies can actually survive for weeks without eating, but we're not used to it. The vast majority, 99% of people, are very much used to eating 3 squares, and I'm talking about in the Western society, 3 square meals a day. Okay? Developed, rich countries get 3 meals a day, and when you take 1 of them away, things start to fracture. When you take 2 of them away, things start to get bad. If you take 3 of them away, then that horde of people now takes to the streets and starts causing havoc, and we have anarchy. So that's the kind of potential future that I want to avoid. So if you can grow your own food, grow your own food, and don't necessarily advertise it either. That's one of the big things about the big ironies, I guess, about what I do, is that I've spent years and years doing this and keeping it very quiet, because that's part of operational security, OPSEC, not putting information out to the world. I've decided that at this point, at this juncture in time, it's no longer beneficial for me to keep what I know to myself. And I think it's more of an encouragement thing, because I want to see more people out there doing this sort of stuff, prepping, having food stored up, a little bit of food stored up. This isn't crazy shit. This isn't tinfoil hat. This isn't doomsday preppers. This is what people have done for generations, what our ancestors had to do. It's what my parent, or what my dad did, at least, and my mum to a certain extent. My dad was a bit older, though. It's what my grandparents definitely did. It's what their grandparents did. It's what their grandparents did. We have had generations and generations of human beings who just were smart, who had common sense, and we've lost it now. And we think that having 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months worth of food in your own home is fucking crazy. Who would do that? Are you insane? It's not crazy. It's sane. It's the most sane and rational thing that you can actually do right now. Learn how to grow food right now. Learn how to harvest that food and store it somehow. You don't need to go buy a $10,000 freeze dry machine in order to store food. People have lived and stored food for hundreds of thousands of years in one way or another. So we can do it too. Just smoke from a fire actually preserves food. Who would have thought? But there are other ways too. All right, last thing I'm going to talk about today is the US situation. Troubling signs. I've got friends in the US. I think about them a lot. I worry, not worry, but I hope they're doing okay. I'll look at the situation that's happening in the US right now. It's something we need to think about because it does spill out to what happens in the US. Like, I'll give you the example of Black Lives Matter or Me Too. That was a big US-based thing, came out of the US, and then all of a sudden, all around the world, other protests and riots were kicking off. I'm a big believer in freedom of speech, and I'm very happy for people to protest. I have no worries about that. What I am concerned about is when these things turn violent and how people keep themselves safe if they don't want to be caught in that violence. If you do want to be caught in that violence, then put your big boy pants on, go into it, and do what you feel like you need to do. All right, that's on you. But it's the innocent people, it's the people who unnecessarily caught up in this sort of thing, and who feel the consequences of it. So that's what I'm concerned about. Keeping yourself safe, keeping yourself aware of what's happening. I'm thinking about that right now in consideration of the Roe versus Wade fallout. I'm in Canberra. There is a US embassy here. There are planned protests around it. Do I think they'll turn violent? No, not in Australia. We're in the small percentage of countries that the protests don't generally turn violent here. Can happen, has happened, certainly around lockdown measures and stuff like that. Maybe it should have too. Anyway, I'll talk about this story here. Kieran just said, our New South Wales Premier called Aussie protesters bloody idiots just yesterday. Yeah, I mean, as an authoritarian government who is clearly now like a little child trying to grab onto their power, hold their power, and I'm not talking about the New South Wales government, I'm talking about all Australian governments right now. I haven't seen any examples that fill me with hope or anything like that. And I'm to a large extent, all world governments seem to be scrambling to hold on to power. I don't see any governments actually saying, you know what, it's time to return the power back to the people. We need to push this back onto you guys, and the responsibility back onto you guys. It's time for everyone to grow up and us to take a step forward as a society and be adult about this. So I'm going to stop trying to control your lives. I'm going to assume that you as an adult actually know how to live, and I'm going to give power away. That's not happening. That's not what I'm seeing, at least. That's not my interpretation of it. Kieran says ABC called Q fans cultists and dangerous just yesterday. Yeah, I mean that the terminology, the rhetoric, the name calling. This is all the issues that I'm seeing with it today. Is that we're getting more into this fractious my team, your team. I mean, when I grew up, teams used to be about sport, right? I support Hawthorn, you support Essendon, so I hate you, but we'll still go have a beer afterwards. It's only when our teams are playing, and we'll have a bit of a joke and a jib, whatever. You support the LA Lakers? Nah, man, Boston Celtics all the way. And now all of a sudden it's about politics. It's about my stances. It's about my thoughts, my hopes, my dreams for the future. You believe that? Oh, you're one of these people now. It's easy to characterize people and put them in the box and go, okay, yep, you like that? I hate you. You're a Trumpist, or you're a leftist, or whatever. Man, the world just isn't that simple. It's shades of gray. There's nuance in there, and we should appreciate nuance. Bring back discussion, I say. Make discussion great again. How about that one? Yeah, divide and conquer, Kieran. That's exactly what this is about, and we need to switch on to this. We need to understand that, we're being divided. We're being divided up. Who's stoking those flames too? Who's exacerbating it and making it worse? Maybe it's the Illuminati. Maybe it's the powers that be. Maybe it's China and Russia who are actually doing it. They want a divided West that can't get its shit together. So when they do actually come in, then we are like, oh, what are we doing? Let's fight the good fight. Wait, but what pronouns are we going to use in this military? On my sign-up form, you had male, female. I don't really identify like that. That's kind of what they're thinking about there. Steve Garrington, books to read and get. What do you want to read about? I've talked about this a lot. I'm finishing off Atlas Shrugged at the moment. I think that's a fantastic, like one of the most fantastic novels ever written. Magazines. I've been reading Skill Set magazine and Off Grid Recoil magazine. They're pretty good ones. What am I jumping into next? I've been touching on a few things like Left of Bang and Gift of Fear. They're always pretty good reads. I'm about to jump into The Rugged Life, which is written by Clint Emerson, author of ex-Navy SEAL and author of 100 Deadly Skills. So there's a couple for you this morning. Awake Aussie Prepper. For anyone who's interested in growing food, I found a free PDF copy of Permaculture, a designer's manual by Bill Mollison. I've read it. Fantastic book, Permaculture. Get around it, kids. It's awesome. I'll put the link to it below. So the link's just there. Awake Aussie Prepper. I might. I'll probably hit you up after this to grab that link later, and I'll post it up somewhere as well. Maybe how to self-pollinate our plants. Yeah, I mean, you can look up some YouTube videos on that. There's some good ones on self-pollination. Which, I'm not against self-pollination. There's some times to actually do it, like things like zucchini and certain types of pumpkin. There's like I'm blanking on what the genus or the type of plant is, but you should probably think about self-pollinating those ones, because if you cross-pollinate those ones, you can actually get deadly varieties or varieties that are not very good for you. So, like self-pollination is something you might want to think about too, or get bees. All right, I'm jumping back on this story because I've got to get going soon. And I'm about to run out of battery on my phone. Okay. Whoop, that's not the right story. This is the sort of rhetoric. I just want to read some of this stuff. This is sort of rhetoric that's coming out of the US at the moment, which concerns me about what could happen in the near future for the US. These are government officials. These are represented government authorities. So these are the politicians that were elected by the people, and this is what they're talking about with the Roe versus Wade being overturned. This is the kind of stuff they're saying about their Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court, just for those who don't grasp the magnitude of this, Supreme Court is not the government. Supreme Court is specifically made in the US, specifically made to sit outside the government and not be pressured by any of the infighting, any of the blue-red, any of the trends, whatever that's going on with government. Government is trend heavy. Government goes up and down with the tides of the people. It's fad based, all that sort of stuff. The SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the US, is eternal, or in theory, this is what it's supposed to be, and it is constitutional. So the founding fathers of the US wrote a document and said, we know that humans are fallible. Okay, we know humans are fallible, but this document of laws, of foundational ideas, is not. So let's just reference back to that, okay? Because you and me, tomorrow, I could decide that I like wearing dresses and that you, like eating babies, or that, blah, 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 whatever it is. So let's not trust us. Let's trust that. Let's trust the words that are written. And then let's build a justice system based on that, on the Constitution, okay? And it should only deal with things that are based on the Constitution. Abortion has nothing to do, it's not written into the Constitution, okay? So the the Supreme Court has recognized this and say, hey, this is actually like this is not within our scope, not within our powers. This should be a state by state thing, which I actually think is a good thing, because then the individuals have a closer say, because you vote on who is elected in your state. People have a closer say to the issues that are important to them. So in theory, now the people have more of a say over that particular issue, because they do not elect the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is something that is separate to that whole system. So this is not the people. This is the Constitution. Anyway, so government, Constitution, Supreme Court, just to give you some background there. I'm just going to read out some of the things that were said by the politicians. I get that they're angry, okay? I get that this is a very emotive issue. I understand that. However, I'll just read this stuff. This extremist Supreme Court works to punish and control the American people. Democrats must continue our fight to expand freedom in America. So that person there is saying this Supreme Court is working to punish Americans. It's working against us. So that's sort of tantamount to somebody saying that the Constitution is working against us. We need to fight it. We need to fight the Supreme Court. We need to fight the Constitution. That's what it's tantamount to. Who said that? That was Pelosi, the Speaker. All right. This court has lost this is someone else. This court has lost legitimacy. They have burned whatever legitimacy they may still have had after their gun decision. That's another one I want to talk about right now. After their voting decision, after their union decision, they just took the last of it and set a torch to it. So this is somebody saying that the Supreme Court, again, something that is a foundational institute. The politicians come and go. The Supreme Court is a foundational institute. That they're saying that they're illegitimate. Essentially, we shouldn't listen to them. Who's that? That's a senator, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Here's another one. To hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. That's Representative Maxine Waters. And last one, the court is illegitimate. And this person actually urged protesters into the streets. So they are urging protesters into the streets. That's for those of you who struggle with definitions of things, that's called incitement. That is from Congresswoman, I can't remember, Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. That's incitement, okay? And that's even lesser language than this was what people were calling for impeachment on the orange dude who was in last time. And so now you're seeing this sort of language, like, are there calls to like impeach Biden based on this? Because Biden's been saying similar sort of stuff, not to this kind of level, but this I look at this and I'm like, whoa, you're a politician, okay? Like, you shouldn't be inciting people into the streets for violence. You should be calmly discussing this sort of stuff and making headway into how you can actually solve the problem. Not asking people to rise up. That's a revolutionary. So this sort of stuff, I look at it and I go, this does not bode well for the US. And like I said, things do not stay contained within the US. That's the problem. Things burst out the seams of the US, and they eventually, because the main sheeple here in Australia, they sit there and like, what's happening in mainstream media? Oh, people are writing over this issue. Yeah, let's go right over this issue. Even though, does it have anything to do with Australia? Does it affect our abortion laws in Australia? Nope. Nope. Supreme Court of US has nothing to do with Australia, but it's still going to affect us. That's the issue here. So that's what we're looking at this morning. The issue in the US, it concerns me. It's a big deal. It's something I think we all need to think about and sort of plan for. Find our center line and go, okay, yep, all right, that's fine. it doesn't really matter. I don't really care where you sit on the issue. That's not the point here. What we need to actually do is start to go, okay, how is this going to fall out or potentially fall out in our countries? And if you are in the US, if you're watching this in the US, how's this going to fall out in my country? If you do live in and around a populated area, a city, a larger town or something like that, if you do live in especially I would say a more liberal leaning area, then this should be a concern for you. This should definitely be a concern for you. This is something you really need to think about. You need to prepare for. Me personally, my everyday carry bag, I'd be thinking about, okay, should I start to load this up with my riot gear? And that's certainly something that I'm thinking about and doing. So my EDC bag, that's starting to be like, do I need my wilderness shelter? Maybe not. Do I need my gas mask? Yep. Do I need maybe something to defend myself with? Yep. What kind of clothing and stuff am I wearing? This is all the sort of stuff that I'm starting to think about. But yeah, keep yourself safe out there. That's what I'm mainly concerned about. Keep your eyes open. Keep situational awareness. Be in the moment. Don't be distracted by all the pretty lights of the world at the moment, or the flashing things on your screen in front of you. Keep abreast of what's going on and stay safe. That's what I wanted to talk about with that today. So many of my ex-friends ask me why I'm so concerned with American politics. Yeah, well, I mean, as America goes, so does the rest of the West at the moment. Usually to a lesser extent, but that's generally what we see happening. So that's the cheery news for today, gang. No, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. Obviously, there's a lot of positive signs that are still out there. Like I said, in Australia, we don't necessarily go straight to violence here. We have other options, and our ability to riot is somewhat pathetic, somewhat curtailed. I'll put it that way. But yeah, well, that's it for today. I've got to go get myself ready to roll. So stay safe out there, whatever you're doing. Again, if you're in more populated areas, stay a little bit more safe, stay a little bit more aware out there. I will encourage you once again to get in the garden and grow food. It's important. It's important to everyone, not just yourself. It's important to your family. It's important to your community. I don't think you need to concern yourself too much with other things beyond that. But look after yourself, look after your family, look after your community. That's the main thing, I think. Yeah. So keep safe. If you've got any questions, send them through to me. And until next time, Semper Paratus.